eventually Sage passed in June of 2016 also, and it was a combination of the AVM um, growing in size, compressing his brainstem, and causing incurable seizures that actually ended up destroying the one healthy remnant of his brain, which was his right hemisphere. Um, and so my husband and I, made the compassionate choice to end his treatment as opposed to intubating and, trying to manage epilepsy that couldn't be cured. Um, so that was our experience with Sage. And while we were in the hospital, our doctor, Sage's neurointerventional radiologist, told us that there was this new gene that had been discovered that was very new and not responsible for all AV malformations, but there was a real link there, and encouraged us to, potentially research that more if we were interested in. And my husband and I were incredibly interested. We wanted to know everything about what happened and how his AVM grew so large um, without any symptoms in pregnancy specifically. That process, and I know we'll get into this later, it did lead us to a genetic diagnosis. Even though Sage never had any genetic testing done, it was in our family. And so it put us into a position of even more threat, because we weren't sure at the time if our other son, Gabriel, was a positive, if he was a carrier, if he had a malformation. We didn't know what our future was for future children. And so we spent several years meeting with geneticists and specialized OBGYNs at Mass General and at Children's, and in different locations, trying to kind of figure out what happened to Sage and what was happening to us and what our future prospects were. We were referred to IVF as the safest bet for having a child. And ultimately, my husband and I decided that that was not in our best interest. So kind of miraculously, I discovered that I was pregnant also this past December, and I'm currently 36 weeks now pregnant with our third son. So it's been a very interesting, long road. And I think specifically because Sage was always kind of in his infancy and will forever be in his infancy. And because he experienced so much trauma and suffering in that newborn period, I realized very quickly that even this pregnancy, as somewhat typical as it's progressed, is still unique. And the things that I experienced with Sage in my postpartum period, because I went from giving birth to going right into, in the course of Sage's life, we were in 4 different hospitals. And I had no postpartum care. There was no laying in bed. There was no, typical experience around that. And there was a lot of grief, not just in what we missed, but in what happened to Sage. And that impact absolutely carries forward into subsequent pregnancies, because how could it not? So that's kind of where we're at. We're only a few weeks away now from giving birth, and it's exciting and bittersweet, difficult at times, and also uncertain. There's a lot that we can't control, which obviously that's the norm for parents like us. We basically can't control anything in our lives, and the prospect of having another child that we're kind of bringing into the world, and that level of uncertainty, it's important to be discussed.